Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a haunting, one that was so intense, so genuinely terrifying, it earned a pretty chilling nickname.
Yep, the Hell House Case. And believe me, it earned that name for a reason. So let's get right into the story of a family whose perfect Connecticut dream home turned into an absolute living nightmare. All right, let's set the scene. It's the summer of 1998, and we're with the Beckwith family, Sean, Bonnie, and their 3 kids. You know, just a totally normal family, about to make a huge, life-changing move.
After years and years of saving up, they finally found it, their dream home. It was this big, beautiful, historic house, and get this, the price was surprisingly low. It was one of those deals that almost feels too good to be true, you know? But for them, it was just too good to pass up.
But right from the get-go, one family member felt something was seriously off. While everyone else was inside, totally charmed by the old-fashioned interior, the oldest daughter, Frances, wouldn't even step foot in the house. She just stood out on the lawn, telling her mom she had this horrible, overwhelming feeling of dread, that something inside was just wrong.
Well, they kind of brushed off Frances's warning and moved in anyway, super excited for this new chapter. But the strange stuff, it started literally the very first night.
Okay, so just look at how quickly things escalated here. Night 1, their young son Jeremy has his blanket ripped right off of him and chucked out the window. Just 10 days later, their daughter Jennifer's bed is shaking so violently it's rattling across the floor. By Thanksgiving, even their grandmother is terrorized in the guest room and just bolts the next morning. This wasn't just spooky noises, these were physical, personal attacks, and they were targeting everyone.
So finally, they all sit down and talk, and as they start sharing their stories, this floodgate of fear just opens up. They realize every single one of them was being tormented. The worst part? They were stuck, financially trapped. They couldn't afford to just pack up and leave, so they knew, right then and there, they had to stay and fight whatever was in that house with them. Now, what do you do in a situation like that? Well, Bonnie, the mom, remembered the famous Amityville haunting. So in a pretty desperate move, she made a call to the most renowned paranormal investigators she could think of, Ed and Lorraine Warren.
So the Warrens show up, and right away, even for them, and these guys have seen it all, the energy in that house felt off. It was oppressive. Lorraine, who is a well-known clairvoyant, was immediately drawn to Jennifer's bedroom. She said that was the epicenter, the source of it all. And what she sensed wasn't just a ghost. It was something powerful, and something that had never been human.
Okay, so this is a huge moment. This is their first attempt to actually communicate with whatever's there. They bring in a medium, a woman named Lee, to try and make contact. She goes into this trance-like state, picks up a pen, and everyone just waits, holding their breath to see what message, if any, comes through.
And her hand starts to move, scrawling out a single hostile command.
Get out. Then it happened again, even more forcefully this time.
And a third time. Yeah, the message was pretty unmistakable. So that really paints a picture, doesn't it? This made the whole thing crystal clear. They weren't dealing with some poor, lost soul. This was a territorial, angry force that wanted them gone. And interestingly, besides that hostile warning, Lee also wrote down 2 names, George Robertson and Anna. As they dug deeper, they realized just how complex this haunting was. See, it wasn't just one thing. They believed there were 2 human spirits in the house, but they weren't in control. A third, non-human demonic entity was basically holding them hostage, preventing them from moving on and using them to torment the Beckwiths.
So they try an exorcism. They bring in a priest, but it fails. In fact, it seems to do the opposite of what they wanted. It just made the entity even angrier. After that, life in the house became a total nightmare. The family was fighting constantly over nothing, just this unbearable tension and irritability filling every room.
The investigators realized they needed to try and make contact again. They had to understand what they were fighting. But this time it went horribly, horribly wrong. The entity didn't just communicate, it took full control.
Lee didn't just write this time. No, she full-on attacked Ed Warren, grabbing him by the throat with what they described as inhuman strength. And then she spoke, but it wasn't her voice. It was this deep, gargling sound, and it demanded to know who Ed thought he was to question it. The whole situation was just spiraling out of control.
This led to the final confrontation. They brought in a more experienced priest for one last big exorcism. Lee was immediately possessed again, so they had to literally bind her to a thick wooden chair to keep everyone safe. But get this,
She broke the solid wood legs of the chair with her feet. Just pure inhuman power. For an entire hour, it was this terrifying struggle. And then, after all that chaos, just silence. For the first time ever, a feeling of actual peace settled over the house. It worked. The exorcism was successful. All the torment, the weird events, that heavy, oppressive feeling, it was just gone. The Beckwiths could finally start to live a normal life. But the story doesn't quite end there.
Fast forward 2 years. A neighbor is doing some construction, digging a new foundation for their house, and the workers find something. Something chilling. They unearth human bones, a lot of them. And this discovery just changes everything. A historical review is done, and it turns out the entire neighborhood had been built directly on top of a sacred, ancient Native American burial ground. Suddenly, it all made a terrible kind of sense. The haunting probably wasn't personal to the Beckwiths at all. Their house just happened to be sitting on deeply disturbed, sacred land.
The family lived in the house for 4 more years before they finally sold it. It was last sold in 2018, and apparently it's been empty ever since. Oh, and what about those names the medium, Lee, wrote down? Well, they were able to confirm that a man named George Robertson did in fact build the house back in 1888. But the other name, Anna, she remains a complete mystery.
So the Beckwiths managed to escape their own personal hell. But it really makes you wonder, right? Was that evil truly banished from the land itself? Or is it just waiting? Lying dormant right there under the foundation, just waiting for the next family to move in?